They said I would fail. My own family laughed when I chose my path. 5 years later, I bought the house they could never afford. This is the story of how I turned their mockery into my greatest motivation, and how karma served them a lesson they will never forget. My name is Ember and I am 26 years old. Growing up, I was always the black sheep of my family. While my older sister Vanessa pursued a traditional corporate career and my younger brother Marcus followed our parents into the family business, I chose a completely different path. I wanted to build something of my own. Something creative. Something meaningful. But to my family that translated to failure. They could not understand why I would turn down a guaranteed position in their real estate company to chase what they called pipe dreams. What happened next taught me that sometimes the people who doubt you the most are the ones who fear your success the most. This is the story of how I proved them all wrong, and how their judgment came back to haunt them in ways they never imagined. I grew up in a traditional family where success meant one thing: money, status, and following the predetermined path. My father built a moderately successful real estate company in our mid-sized city. Nothing spectacular, but enough to provide a comfortable upper-middle-class lifestyle. My mother worked alongside him, managing the office and maintaining the family image. Appearances were everything to them. Vanessa, my older sister by 4 years, was their golden child. She graduated with honors from business school, landed a job at a prestigious consulting firm, and seemed to have her life figured out by 25. She wore designer clothes, drove a luxury car financed by our parents, and never missed an opportunity to remind me how well she was doing. Marcus, younger by 2 years, was different. He was content to work under our father, learning the business and waiting for his inheritance. He lacked ambition but had our parents' approval, which seemed to be all that mattered to him. Then there was me. I loved art, design, and storytelling. In high school, I spent hours creating digital illustrations and building websites for local businesses. I taught myself graphic design, branding, and social media marketing. By the time I graduated, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to start my own digital marketing and branding agency. My family's reaction was immediate and brutal. My father told me I was wasting my potential. My mother said I was being naive and irresponsible. Vanessa laughed in my face, asking how I planned to support myself making pretty pictures. Marcus stayed silent, but his expression said everything. The real breaking point came during Sunday dinner at my parents' house. I was 21, fresh out of community college with an associate degree in digital media. I had been freelancing for 18 months, building my portfolio and client base. I was making decent money, around $3,000 per month, but to my family it was nothing. My father announced that he had secured me a position in his company as an administrative assistant. Starting salary, $35,000 per year. Benefits included. He presented it like a gift, like he was rescuing me from my foolish choices. I politely declined. I explained that I was building my own business and that I believed in my vision. The table went silent. Then the attacks began. My father called me ungrateful and short-sighted. My mother said I was throwing away security for fantasies. Vanessa smirked and said she gave me 2 years before I came crawling back, begging for help. Marcus suggested I was being selfish and immature. The worst moment came when my father stood up, pointed at me, and said something I will never forget. He told me I would amount to nothing. That I lacked the discipline and intelligence to succeed in the real world. That watching me fail would be painful but necessary. He said I was no longer welcome to ask for financial help when my little experiment collapsed. I left that dinner in tears, but something shifted inside me. Their cruelty became my fuel. I decided that night that I would not just succeed. I would surpass every single one of them. The next 5 years were brutal. I worked 16-hour days, 7 days a week. I lived in a tiny studio apartment that cost $550 per month. I ate ramen and rice to save money. I reinvested every dollar I earned into my business. I taught myself advanced skills through online courses. I networked relentlessly. I cold called businesses until my voice went hoarse. I designed logos, built websites, managed social media campaigns, and slowly built a reputation. My family watched from a distance, waiting for me to fail. They made comments at family gatherings I reluctantly attended. They asked when I would get a real job. They compared my modest lifestyle to Vanessa's luxury apartment and Marcus's new truck. Every interaction felt like a test, a chance for them to prove they were right about me. But something was happening behind the scenes. My client roster was growing. I had moved from working with local small businesses to regional companies. I hired my first employee at year 3. Then 2 more at year 4. By year 5, I had a team of 7 and we were landing contracts worth $50,000 to $75,000. I kept my success quiet. I did not post about it on social media. I did not brag at family events. I let them believe what they wanted to believe. Meanwhile, I was saving aggressively and planning my next move. The escalation began at Vanessa's 30th birthday party. She had rented an expensive venue and invited everyone who was anyone in her social circle. The party was extravagant, clearly designed to show off her success. She wore a designer dress that probably cost $2,000 and spent the evening talking about her recent promotion to senior consultant. I arrived in a simple but elegant dress I had bought on sale. I brought a thoughtful gift and genuinely tried to celebrate my sister. But within an hour, the passive-aggressive comments began. Vanessa introduced me to her friends as her younger sister who was still figuring things out. She mentioned that I ran a little graphic design hobby. When someone asked about my work, she interrupted to talk about real careers and real money. My father cornered me near the bar. He had been drinking and was feeling bold. He asked how my business was going with a smirk that said he already knew the answer he wanted to hear. I told him it was going well. He laughed and said that well for me probably meant barely scraping by. He suggested again that the offer to join his company still stood if I was ready to be serious about my future. My mother approached with concern that felt more like judgment. She asked if I was eating enough, if I could afford health care, if I had thought about my retirement. Every question was designed to highlight my perceived failures. Marcus, emboldened by alcohol, decided to join in. He told a story about how he had just closed a deal worth $120,000 for the family company. He looked directly at me and asked how my little projects compared to real business. The group around us laughed. I excused myself and left early. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, shaking with anger and humiliation. But underneath the hurt was something stronger. Determination. I had been planning something big, and their behavior that night convinced me to accelerate my timeline. The following Monday, I met with my business partner and my accountant. I had been preparing to make a major purchase. 6 months earlier, I had identified a property in an exclusive neighborhood on the outskirts of the city. It was a beautiful 4-bedroom house with modern architecture, a home office perfect for running my growing agency, and a price tag of $475,000. I had been saving and investing carefully. My business was generating consistent revenue of around $30,000 per month in profit. I had $200,000 saved for a down payment. My accountant confirmed that I could comfortably afford the mortgage. My business partner supported the decision, understanding that having a professional space would help us land even bigger clients. I made an offer. It was accepted within 48 hours. But I did not tell my family. Not yet. I had a different plan. Around the same time, I learned through Marcus that my parents' business was struggling. The real estate market had shifted and their traditional approach was not working anymore. They were facing increased competition from companies with stronger online presences and modern marketing. Younger agents were taking their market share. My father was too proud to adapt, and their revenue had dropped by nearly 40% over 2 years. Marcus mentioned during a rare phone call that they might need to downsize their office and lay off staff. He sounded worried about his own position. Vanessa, meanwhile, had been passed over for a partnership at her firm. She was still making good money, but her career had plateaued, and the financial pressure of maintaining her lifestyle was showing. I saw an opportunity. Not for revenge yet, but for leverage. I reached out to several of my father's competitors through my business connections. I offered comprehensive digital marketing packages designed specifically for real estate companies. Within 3 months, I had signed 4 of his direct competitors as clients. My strategies helped them dominate the online space that my father had ignored. I watched from a distance as my father's business continued to decline while the companies I was helping thrived. It was not personal. It was just business. But it felt like justice. Then came the moment I had been waiting for. My parents announced they were hosting a family dinner to discuss something important. The tone was serious. I knew what was coming. The dinner was tense from the start. My parents looked exhausted. The house, once immaculate, showed signs of neglect. Small things, peeling paint on the porch, overgrown landscaping, but enough to notice. Vanessa arrived late, complaining about work stress. Marcus looked uncomfortable, like he knew what was coming and dreaded it. My father started the conversation. He explained that the business was in trouble. Serious trouble. They had been operating at a loss for 8 consecutive months. They had drained their savings trying to stay afloat. They were facing the possibility of closing down entirely or filing for bankruptcy. He said they needed help. He looked at Vanessa first. She immediately became defensive, explaining that she had her own expenses and her own life to manage. She mentioned her student loans, her car payment, her rent. She could not help financially. He looked at Marcus next. Marcus admitted that he had no savings. He had been living paycheck to paycheck, assuming the business would always provide. Then they both looked at me. The irony was not lost on anyone at that table. The family failure, the one who would amount to nothing, was their last hope. My father's voice was different now. Quieter. Almost humble. He asked if my business was successful enough that I might be able to loan them some money. Just to get through the rough patch. $20,000 would help. $50,000 would save them. My mother added that they knew they had been hard on me. That maybe they had not understood my choices. That family should help family. I sat there silently for a long moment. Vanessa looked away, unable to meet my eyes. Marcus studied his plate. My parents waited, their desperation palpable. I could have said yes. I could have been the bigger person. I could have written them a check and saved their business. But something stopped me. It was not cruelty. It was self-respect. They had not just doubted me. They had actively tried to break my spirit. They had mocked my dreams and celebrated what they assumed would be my failure. I spoke calmly. I told them I would think about it. That I needed to review my finances and see what was possible. I promised to give them an answer within 1 week. The relief on their faces was temporary. They sensed something in my tone. Something that suggested the answer might not be what they hoped. I left that dinner knowing exactly what I was going to do. I spent the next 3 days planning my response carefully. This was not about cruelty. It was about truth. About showing them exactly who I had become while they were not paying attention. I contacted my real estate agent and confirmed that my house closing was scheduled for the following Friday. Perfect timing. I worked with my business partner to prepare a presentation showcasing our company's growth. Revenue charts, client testimonials, case studies, employee roster, projected earnings. Everything documented and professional. I reached out to a local business journalist who had been wanting to do a feature on successful young entrepreneurs in the area. I agreed to an interview and photo shoot at my new house. I prepared a letter for my family. Not angry, not vengeful, but honest. I wanted them to understand not just what I had accomplished, but why their support would have mattered. Why their doubt had hurt. And why I was choosing to move forward without them in my business life. I also made a decision about the loan. I would offer them something, but with conditions that would teach them the lesson they needed to learn. On Thursday evening, I invited my entire family to dinner at a nice restaurant. Not cheap, but not ostentatious. I told them I had news about their request and wanted to discuss it in person. They arrived with obvious anxiety. Vanessa wore less makeup than usual, looking tired. Marcus seemed defeated. My parents were trying to maintain dignity, but the stress was written all over their faces. We ordered food. I waited until everyone had arrived and we were settled before I began speaking. I started by thanking them for coming. Then I told them I had made a decision about their request for financial help. But first I said I wanted to share some news. I told them I had purchased a house. My father assumed I meant a small starter home, maybe a condo. He nodded politely. I corrected him. I described the 4-bedroom house in Oak Haven Estates, one of the most exclusive neighborhoods in the city. The same neighborhood where Vanessa had once told me she would buy a house when she made partner. I explained that I had paid $200,000 in cash as a down payment. That my mortgage was $275,000, which I was comfortably affording with my business income. That I was closing the following Friday. The table went silent. Vanessa's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Marcus looked confused. My parents exchanged glances of disbelief. I continued. I told them my business had grown to generate between $28,000 and $35,000 in profit each month. That I employed 7 people full-time. That we had contracts with major regional companies worth over $600,000 annually. That I had been approached by 2 different investment firms interested in scaling my agency. I showed them my phone. I pulled up our company website, our client portfolio, testimonials from executives at companies they recognized. I showed them the business feature article that would run the following week, complete with professional photos. My father started to speak, but I held up my hand. I was not finished. I told them about the competitors of theirs that I had been working with. I explained how my strategies had helped those companies dominate the digital space. How I had turned down 3 different offers from companies wanting to hire me for 6-figure salaries because I believed in building my own empire. Vanessa's face had gone pale. She started to say something about being happy for me, but it sounded hollow. I turned to my parents. I told them I would help them, but not in the way they expected. I would not give them money. Money would not fix their fundamental problem. Their business was failing because they had refused to adapt and modernize. Instead, I offered them something more valuable. I would consult for their business for free. 6 months of my time and my team's expertise. We would rebuild their online presence, create a comprehensive digital marketing strategy, train their staff, and position them competitively in the modern market. But there were conditions. First, they had to acknowledge that they were wrong about me. Publicly and sincerely. No half-hearted apologies. They needed to admit that their judgment had been cruel and unfair. Second, they had to listen to my advice without argument. If they hired me as a consultant, they followed my strategies completely. No more arrogant assumptions that they knew better. Third, they had to treat their employees with respect during this transition. No scapegoating. No blaming others for their failures. Fourth, and most importantly, they needed to understand that I was doing this not because I owed them anything, but because I chose to. Because despite everything, they were still family. But moving forward, our relationship would be based on mutual respect, not hierarchy. My father's eyes were wet. He started to respond, his voice breaking. He said he was sorry. That he had been wrong. That his pride had blinded him to my talent and determination. That watching me succeed on my own terms was both humbling and impressive. My mother reached across the table and took my hand. She apologized for not believing in me, for prioritizing appearances over supporting her daughter's dreams. She said she was proud of me and she should have said it years ago. Vanessa was crying. She admitted that she had been jealous. That my independence and success made her question her own choices. That she had been living beyond her means trying to maintain an image while I had been building something real. She asked if we could start over. Marcus was quiet for a long time. Finally he spoke. He said he admired me. That he had been too afraid to take risks like I had. That he wanted to learn from me if I was willing to teach him. I told them I accepted their apologies. That I would help their business. That we could rebuild our relationship. But things would be different now. I would not tolerate disrespect or judgment. I would not accept conditional love based on their definition of success. The dinner ended with an understanding. The following week I brought my team to their office and we began the transformation process. Within 3 months, their website traffic had increased by 200%. Within 6 months, they had closed 8 new major deals directly attributed to our digital marketing efforts. Their business was not just saved, it was thriving. My father called me one evening months later. He told me he had recommended my agency to 5 other business owners. That he bragged about me constantly. That he finally understood what I had been building all along. Life changed dramatically after that dinner. My relationship with my family transformed from toxic to supportive. It was not perfect. Relationships this damaged never fully heal, but it was authentic. Vanessa and I became closer than we had ever been. She admitted that her life was not as perfect as she had pretended. She was burned out, unfulfilled, and reconsidering her path. I helped her explore consulting work that aligned with her values rather than just her resume. She eventually left her firm and started doing independent strategy consulting. She made less money but was significantly happier. Marcus asked to learn about digital marketing. I hired him part-time to work on content creation for my agency. He discovered he had a talent for writing and storytelling. He eventually transitioned away from the family real estate business to pursue content marketing full-time. My father supported his decision, having learned from his mistakes with me. My parents became genuine supporters of my work. They referred clients to me constantly. They attended my company events. They asked questions about my business with real interest instead of judgment. My mother framed the business feature article and hung it in their office. The house I bought became more than just a symbol of my success. It became my sanctuary. My home office was where I conducted client meetings, recorded podcasts about entrepreneurship, and mentored young women starting their own businesses. I hosted family dinners there, finally on my terms in my space. My business continued growing. We expanded to 12 employees. We opened a small satellite office. We were featured in 3 more publications. I was invited to speak at entrepreneurship conferences. Everything I had dreamed of was happening. But the most satisfying moment came 18 months after that confrontational family dinner. My father's company had recovered fully and was more profitable than it had been in 5 years. He called me to thank me not just for the consulting work but for teaching him humility. He told me something I had waited my entire life to hear. He said he was wrong about everything. That my path was not easier than Vanessa's or Marcus's, it was braver. That building something from nothing required more courage than he had given me credit for. That I had not just succeeded despite his doubt, I had succeeded because of my response to it. He said I had become the person he had hoped to raise, just not through the path he had expected. He was proud of me. Genuinely, deeply proud. I forgave him fully in that moment. Not because what he had done was okay, but because holding on to anger was no longer serving me. I had proven everything I needed to prove. To him, to my family, but most importantly, to myself. This experience taught me several critical lessons that I carry with me every single day. First, other people's doubt about you is usually just their fear projected onto your ambition. My family did not doubt my potential because I lacked it. They doubted me because my unconventional path scared them. It challenged their beliefs about security and success. Second, proving people wrong is satisfying, but building something meaningful is more important. My initial motivation was their doubt. But ultimately, my business succeeded because I loved what I was doing. The revenge was just a bonus. Third, success is the best response to negativity. I did not need to argue with my family or defend myself endlessly. I just needed to keep working and let my results speak for themselves. Fourth, family relationships can heal, but only when both sides are willing to be honest and humble. My family's apology meant something because it was genuine. And my willingness to help them meant something because I chose it freely, not from obligation. Finally, defining success on your own terms is the only path to real fulfillment. If I had followed my father's path, I might have been comfortable, but I would have been miserable. Building my own business, despite the risks and the doubt, gave me something far more valuable than security. It gave me purpose. If you have ever been doubted by the people who should support you most, this story is for you. If you have ever been told you will fail, remember that their judgment says more about them than about you. Keep building. Keep pushing. Keep proving them wrong, not because you need their validation, but because you deserve to see what you are capable of creating. Thank you for listening to my story. If this resonated with you, please subscribe for more stories about standing up for yourself and finding your path. I read every comment and I would love to hear about your experiences with family doubt and personal triumph.